other day, hell, that's been 30 years ago. And then also some friends of mine during the Gulf War, they landed cargo, and they'd get over Cairo, and they'd give them to Middle East Control, which were Americans, and it was always at night, and they'd give them this left, right, up, down stuff, you know, and then turn on your lights, and there was a runway, and they'd land and taxi to the end, and then they'd unload, and then pull away, and then give them the heading of the runway. You know, they couldn't see anything. It was just absolutely black. And then when they took off, you know, all they had was the runway lights. And then they'd go to Middle East Command.
Where was that based?
Just northwest of her guidehouse. Right.
Oh, yeah, okay.
There's so much background noise. And this room has been under radio surveillance since...
John Lear, take one. Take one!
Okay, John.
Okay, this room has been under surveillance both by the British and the American since 1986, and I'm not sure why it started then. And for some reason, no electronic information getting from this room into the living room, and they're broadcasting or pulling information that way. So I've had the telephone people up here, and they say, yeah, it's your phone. Well, this is in the old days when they used to tap phones. Your phone is tapped at the mainframe, and there's no paperwork to go with it. And then they got all this newfangled stuff, and they come in here and they take what they want. And you know.
When they say they come in here, do they sort of arrive out of thin air like they do with Dr. Rowney Kilda?
Right. I've never seen them. I've never seen anybody.
That's what I mean.
There's stuff missing.
Such as?
Oh, photos that I keep in here. The Benowitz photos. The Benowitz photos were the stuff that he shot out of his, that he took out of his house. He lived just above and outside of the Monsanto weapons storage area behind Kirtland Air Force Base. And he would see the saucers taking off, and he rigged up a television recording thing. He would record a TV screen. Those are the days we didn't have, none of this existed, you know, the stuff we have. And then he took stills of the little domes that would land there and then take off. So, you know, a lot of stuff has disappeared. I'm trying to remember what I noticed the other day.
That would be stuff that you would personally notice, and you would personally know where it was.
Yeah, yeah.
So they see with your eyes.
Pardon?
They see and hear with your ears and your eyes.
Absolutely. That's how it works.
Is that spooky or what?
It was when I first learned about it, but now it's just normal.
Who is the real John Lear? I keep seeing that.
I'm going to put it in. I'm not sure who the real John Lear is. I was picked for a very special mission, and I'm just kind of learning out about it now. The first 40 years of my life, I was a pilot and really enjoyed it. I did everything there was to do, flying, flew everywhere, flew everything. This was in Palm Springs when I was older, and it's hard to believe I could be handsomer, but there it is. Oh, that's flying up at the Nevada test site. I was doing some monitoring of the nuclear activities up there, and that was the OV-10A that I flew. No, that's an OV-10 forward air control airplane, and it's whited out, but right at my stomach you can see my Q clearance, what they used to call a Q clearance.
And Q clearance, is that above top secret? What sort of level is that? What does that mean?
No, that's just civilian top secret. Yeah, that's an TF-104 something. It's a Canadian starfighter, F-104 starfighter.
You seem to really like that aircraft. It seemed to be you'd like flying it, yeah.
Yeah, it was the only time I went over Mach and we done 1.7 on that flight.
Wow. Is there any difference between once you get over the sound barrier? Is there a difference?
Not a particle of difference. And I flew in the best of times, like in the Middle East and Africa. It was before the British came down there and started organizing stuff. We could get away with anything, you know, and get away with. I mean, we could transfer arms and ammunition anywhere, all over the Middle East and in Africa. And then the British started coming in and telling the various governments how to check on airplanes that came in, and how to check IDs, and how to figure out who owned a particular airplane and whether it was properly registered, that kind of stuff. So we had one airplane that we based out of Cairo, and on one side it was all Equatorial Guinea airline markings, and on the other side it was all Liberia markings. So wherever we go into that was particularly friendly to one of the governments or the other, that's the way we'd park, so that the tower could see, oh yeah, they're Equatorial Guinea, they're okay, you know. So, and then for parts, we had a run out of Khartoum, and we'd take cattle to the let's see, what was it? Sudan, not Sudan. Aden, North Aden. We'd fly into Sana, North Sana. There was a nice runway there, and I was flying an old 707 that had the Rolls-Royce engines on it. And we would take cattle, and it wasn't a cargo configuration 707, it was just passenger. And of course, we'd take all the passenger seats out, and then we'd load the cattle, and we'd fly them into Sana and unload there.
Oh, was it anything special about the cows?
Yeah, just cows to feed the soldiers. They were buying them from the Sudan. And the way that we supported our airplane, got parts, is there was one 707 that was wrecked off the side of the runway in Sana'a, and then Air Sudan had landed short of the runway in Khartoum, about 2 miles short of the runway in the Nile. And there was a 707 that was just parked in the middle of the runway, and we got parts from that, mainly from the tail and stuff like that. So those were our spare parts, our supply of spare parts. The main base was up in Egypt, and it was the company was named Air Trans, and the head honcho was Hank Wharton, who was one of the premier gun runners of the century. And he's who I worked for. And when I was in Cairo, that was when Bush was trying to get elected over. No, Reagan was trying to get elected over Carter. And then you remember the October surprise? That was in the October of 1980, and Bush went over to Paris to meet with representatives of Khomeini, and I forget what the name of the guy was, but
this is when Bush was in the CIA.
He was director. Yeah.
Director.
And so his deal was to the Khomeini: if you delay the release of the hostages until Reagan's inauguration, if he's inaugurated, we'll give you unlimited arms and ammunition for the rest of our administration. So the Khomeini did delay the release of the hostages, and then when Reagan was elected, they started funneling arms into Tehran through Tel Aviv. And I was supposed to fly those arms, but what happened is, and this was in '91 when they finally got around to delivering them, what happened is Mossad was running the operation, and they sent in an Argentinian CL-44 as a first run, because they didn't want to risk the 707s getting downed or anything in case anybody was going to get upset. And the CL-44 went into Tehran, dropped the arms, and then on its way out, the Russians shot it down 30 miles south of Yerevan. And nobody could figure out why they got shot down, because they knew that there was false beacons there. We'd all been briefed exactly what the route was. There should have been no problem. They didn't have anything on board. So the only thing we can figure is that that the crew that Russia sent down MiGs to force them into Russia to put them force them down, and the crew probably said, well, hell, we got nothing on board, we'll just follow them. So as soon as they got inside the border of Russia, they just shot them down, and the message was, don't take these arms to Tehran.
They let you get the arms in, but not out. In other words,
the arms were delivered by the U.S. to Zaragoza, and then the Israelis would pick it up in Zaragoza and transfer it to Tel Aviv, and then we'd pick it up in Tel Aviv, and our mission was taken from Tel Aviv to Tehran. So I never did that, because when the CL-44 got shot down, the whole operation went to the Gulf. They either used Qatar or Dubai or one of those places, and they took it just across the Gulf to Tehran. I never found out how they, or whether they delivered the arms were delivered, but I don't know how.
What kind of arms?
Whatever the Iranians had ordered, whatever it was, just small arms. That's about all we can take in those airplanes. It was about that time that we were taking arms from Athens, Greece, to Johannesburg. And I remember, let's see, I don't remember what the year, the year was 81 or something, and there was one last flight to be made out of Athens, and the government was going to change the next day. And I don't know what they had in the airplane, but it was at night in Athens, and I remember Hank came out, and he said, you're pretty heavy, so you can stop and refuel in Nairobi and then go on down to Johannesburg. And the one thing you don't want to do is, when you have arms, is stop halfway. And so it gives too many people too much of a chance to look at what you got. So I kind of figured it out, and I said, I think I can make it nonstop, Hank. And he said, well, I'll give you 1,000 extra if you make it nonstop. No problem. So I told the crew that we were going to take off way over gross weight at Athens, going to the north there. And but no problem. We went up, took it over, and took it off and climbed to altitude. And Hank always claimed that he would get us clearance for the different countries, but he never did. So
yeah, Europe's that's a bit.
What?
It's a bit tricky doing that even for civilians.
So my co-pilot name was Munchie, because always munching stuff. We get down over Cairo was no problem, but we get down over Sudan, and we meet the FIR and the Flight Information Region, and we have to report in. And Munchie goes, Sudan, Boeing 526 estimate, or over Khartoum at 26 estimate the border 11, over. And Sudan would come up and say, Khartoum, Roger, please give us your overflight clearance number. And then Munchie would go, Khartoum, this is Boeing 526, over Khartoum at 26 flight level 350, estimate the FIR at 49er, over. And then Sudan would go, or Khartoum would come back, 707, we demand that you give us the overflight clearance, So it was at night, and what they were going to send up, to shoot us down, I don't know, but it was a lot of fun working with them. And I think the total time to Johannesburg was 11 hours, and we made it nonstop, so that was a nice flight. This is the Khartoum operation. That was Hank Wharton. He's the guy that we worked for, and this is Joe Weber, my engineer, and this was a Khartoum, or a Sudan co-pilot, and this was taken in Cairo, and that's in the cockpit, and there's another picture here. Oh, that's in Sana right there. Yeah, that's in Sana. Just all the way across. That's what we did. Pardon?
Talking claptrap.
Right.
But who was the arms for in South Africa?
I don't know who those were for, but during the Falkland War, we had a deal. It never came off, but my part of it was to fly the airplane to Ostend, Belgium, and wait at the airport, and then France was going to send the Exocet missiles in the train up to Ostend, and they said that they would leave them at the yard there, the train yard, for 2 hours, and then go back to France. And if we could get it off, we could get the Exocets off in that time, then we could have them. Otherwise, they weren't going to wait. And so everything had to come into place for this to happen, and it never happened. But we were supposed to take the Exocets from Austin to direct nonstop to Johannesburg. Or not, we were going to land at Sal, which belongs to an island that belongs to Portugal in the middle of the Atlantic, and then nonstop to Johannesburg. And Johannesburg was shipping them to the Argentinians, who were going to blow up, use them for the British. But that was a big secret in those days, and France didn't want the British to know that they were really, sending those Exocet missiles. And then in 1977, got a call to go to Frankfurt. I wasn't working at the time, I don't think. Let's see. Yeah, I was working for Nevada Airlines, flying DC-3s out of the canyon. And this guy calls up and he says, I hear you're 707 qualified. Do you want to go to work for a couple of weeks or a couple of months? It's a classified mission. Oh, yeah, sure, okay. He says, okay, we'll go to Frankfurt and check into the hotel at the airport, and I'll call you there. And I said, okay, well, how do I get paid for the airplane trip? And he said, well, you pay for it, and I'll reimburse you when you get to Frankfurt. So usually I don't do that, but I thought, well, okay, let's do that. So we went to Frankfurt, and I checked into the hotel, and there was a phone call. And the guy said, he said, be at Lufthansa at 9 in the morning, and will be tickets to go to Budapest. And you'll meet some other people who will introduce themselves. So the next morning showed up at the counter at Frankfurt there, and there was tickets waiting to go to Budapest. And I saw some other Americans standing around, and I knew those guys. I said, what are you guys doing here? And they said, well, you don't think you're going to get in on a deal like this without us, do you? And I said, oh, yeah, well, I guess not.
Yes, this is the famous arms to Somalia. This is the mystery...
The mystery crew.
Mystery crew, yeah. That's in downtown Budapest, as we're getting set to mysteriorize.
So we went to, got on Lufthansa, went to Hungary, to Budapest, and when we went through customs, as we gave our passports to the guy, there was an American guy standing behind the Budapest customs who reached over and got the passport and just gave the guy a nod, and then we went through. And then we were supposed to go to the International Hotel, which we did. And then there was a note to meet that evening at 10 o'clock in room such and such with all these guys. And there was like about 10 or 11. I have a picture around here of the mystery crew. We used to call it the mystery crew.
And then the mystery crew, and this is the article.
Yeah.
This the composite article with the various pictures, which and that's the aircraft. That's the airport coming in.
Yeah, supposedly it had to do with the CIA. What nonsense!
Jesus. Now the.
It's a mystery crew. There's a picture over there. That's my back operation.
Oh, what up with that?
To me, it looks like an arse, if you ask me. It looks like a bum, but,
Well, we had to shoot it from that. This is the Saudi Gazette for one of the days we were doing it, and the name Mystery Crew came from this article, and it said Mystery 707 flying arms to Somalia, and then it says Mystery Boeing 707 airliner apparently loaded with arms landed at Mogadishu Airport on each of the last 3 days. One European airline executive said the tail was painted yellow, but beneath the coat of paint, the emblem of the West Condor, or the West German charter airline Condor, could be seen. He said he saw Somali soldiers unloading chests of the kind needed for packing light arms and ammunition. And so then...
This is when you were working with a company or Air America?
Yeah, no, I always worked contract, not, I didn't have a folder with the company. The Air America stuff was over in Southeast Asia, and that was a whole bunch of different stuff.
That's the 70s?
Pardon?
Is that in the 1970s?
That was 1967 to 1973. 1970, yeah, 67 to 73.
So how does John get into the airplane business?
Well, my dad, hold on just a second, and I'll tell you that. I just want to finish this off right here. That's the Mystery Crew. And that's me where the yellow is, and that's all the guys that were in there. So how did I get into, well, my dad was, he had owned and started a company called Lear Incorporated. He and Paul Galvin had started the original Motorola in the early 20s, and they had developed radio stuff, and one of the important things that my dad alleges that he invented was the B battery eliminator, which allowed you to play a radio in a car without the static ruining the audio. But anyway, he decided...
That's a filter system?
Pardon?
Some kind of filter?
Yeah, the B battery eliminator. That was specific of the stuff that, or the thing that they'd put in to keep the static from going through the audio. So then he decided to sell his interest in Motorola to Paul Galvin, and then he started his own company named Lear Incorporated. And Lear Incorporated spent the next 26 years selling, building, designing radio equipment and mechanical and pump equipment for the Air Force. And in 1955, he had built an airplane called the Lear Star, which was a modification of the Lockheed 18 for executives. And I think Lear Incorporated built about 62 of them, and they were not a financial success. So then in 1957, when he wanted to build the Learjet, his board of directors told him no, and he sold his stock in Lear Inc. to Siegler, became Lear Siegler Corporation, and then he took the money and formed Learjet Corporation. And it was in 55, 56 that I was learning how to fly, and there was always airplanes at the airport that I could just use that belonged to Lear Incorporated. So that's how I started flying. But he didn't like me flying. He wanted me to be an artist or a...
He wanted you to be an artist?
An artist. And he sent an artist over when we lived in Pacific Palisades, and I set up the easel on the front lawn and sit there and learn how to paint on Saturday mornings. But I wanted to be out at the airport, so I'd go out there and spend a lot of time out there. And so that's basically how I started. And then in 1963, in 1962, I had been involved in an accident, airplane accident, which really destroyed me. Right behind you is that picture, and I just wonder if I can call it up here quickly. There, that's the Bucher 131, and I was doing aerobatics and misjudged my altitude, and I was sitting right there, and my face went right through that thing, and it just went straight in, so I didn't have much of a chance to help myself or protect myself. So I don't know what all the other pictures are. A Bucher, Youngman, and 131.
Yeah, that's a Bucher Jungmann 131, built in Spain under German license.
Yeah.
And you can see that fortunately there was nobody sitting in the front cockpit. Otherwise, he'd be about 6 inches wide at this moment. But my face is what went through the panel in the back.
Yeah, you've ruined that panel. That was a good panel.
I lost all my teeth and broke my jaw in 2 places and various other. I think that's what happened to me head.
You mean it knocked some sense into you?
And so it was 2 places, and that's the front. And nobody was sitting in the front, and I was in the back, and it just went straight in. I hurt myself so bad that I remember going to Geneva in an ambulance, which is about 45 minutes away from the boarding school I used to go to. And I remember floating above my body and looking down and saying, no, you're hurt too bad. You're not going to make it. It can't happen. But somehow I know how I got protected. So anyway, I ended up in Santa Monica. It took me a year to recover and recoup, and I started instructing at Hawthorne Airport and just doing little jobs. Went over and instructed at Van Nuys Beechcraft. And then my dad invited me back to the factory to get checked out in the Lear, and I went back and got checked out in it, and then I was trying to find a job flying the Learjet, and I found a job flying for the Flying Tiger line, flying their Learjet.
What is the special thing about the Learjet? Why is it so famous? Everybody knows
because
about
it was the first. It was the first business jet, and it had the pizzazz, and it had the tick tanks, and all the rich people were buying it at the very beginning, and ever after that, no matter if there was 10 different types of business jets manufactured, everybody called them the Learjet, which they weren't, but that's why that was the thing in the beginning. It was just the airplane to have. So then I got to fly in that, and 1967, I applied for a job to ferry. They wanted pilots to ferry the FAC airplane, which was a O2A and B, over to Vietnam, and I applied for that. And I didn't know that it was CIA, but that was the first CIA job.
What's the significance of this O2?
Oh, that's me going across the Pacific. I delivered those airplanes from Wichita, Kansas to Nha Trang, Republic of Vietnam, for between 1967 and 1970. And it usually took about 65 flying hours. And we'd leave Wichita, go to Cannon Air Force Base, then Hamilton Air Force Base in San Francisco, then to Honolulu, Midway, Wake, Guam, Clark Air Force Base in Manila, and then in country.
I don't know where I have that. Let's see if I can find it.
What type of aircraft is that? A FAC? F-A-C?
Forward Air Control. It was this airplane. See if I can find it. What's the name of that thing? FAC. Be under F.
It's amazing that you didn't get scared off after nearly killing yourself.
Well, I knew it was my fault. If I'd have done things other than that, I'd had no problem. There it is. That's over in Cambodia. That's not it. Anyway, when I find that airplane, that's the one that I was ferrying, and I ferried those from 1967 until 1970 over to Vietnam, and then we'd get a ticket back, and we'd come through Hong Kong and back to Wichita, pick up an airplane, and get back to Wichita and deliver another one. And that ended in 1971, and your question was...
what got you into the company?
I applied for this job, finding these airplanes, and it turns out that it was a CIA operation. And so I just kept doing that. And then in when I got back, or when I finished that contract. I flew charter in the Learjet 1972, and I heard about this job over in Cambodia flying Convairs. So I applied for that, and that's where these pictures come from. This is in Cambodia.
Okay, this is the Convair. This is the Convair 440. It was formerly belonged to Finnair, so that's in Cambodia.
Yeah.
And that's the airline that. That's the airline that was that I was flying for, and we were flying passengers back and forth to Battambang, which is in northwest Cambodia, to Prince Sihanoukville, which was in southwest Cambodia. What's the significance of what?
Of the Cambodian thing. Were you doing anything there that you haven't told us?
No, that was just straight stuff.
And did that for a few months, and then I heard about this job that was opening up in, or that was open in Vientiane, Laos. And I went to, it was my co-pilot that told me, and I said, how do I get on? He said, well, you go down Phnom Penh here to the Swiss Indo Shipping and Trading and ask for Kurt Fuhrer and tell him you want to go to work for Continental Air Services, Inc. was who was running it. So there's a book over on that shelf there, and it's called, it was written by one of the spy books, and John Le Carre wrote it, and in the cover you'll see the notification.
Escape from Laos? Is that one?
It's a big thick one. No, it's a
Is this one?
what's the title?
Escape from Laos?
No,
Is that one?
it's a big thick one. No, it's John Le Carre, John Le Carre down to your left, and it's called the Schoolboy, Honorable Schoolboy. That's what it's called, on your left, behind the telescope. John Le Carre, the Honorable Schoolboy. It's a real thick black one. You should see it right there. Now just thumb that open and see the card in there announces Kurt Fuhrer. That's Kurt Fuhrer's announcement that he was killed. And it turns out that he was the head of the Swiss CIA in Phnom Penh. And that's who I went to find out that job up in Laos. And Kurt took my information, gave it to U.S., and then a guy came through and interviewed me, and that's how I ended up in Vientiane.
Look, just get a shot of the back here. That's the guy. But that's correct.
This is a book called Private Warriors by Ken Silverstein, and it came out, maybe 10, 15 years ago. And before it came out, there was a story in Harper's Magazine, and it mentioned Bill Lear Jr., but what they meant, it was me. And so my brother called up, and he said, hey, that wasn't me, that was my brother John. And it had already gone to print, so they changed it at the last minute in the book, and in the book they were able to change the name because John Lear is the same letters as Bill Lear Jr., who they originally put that, and the only thing that tells you what they did is they say John Lear Jr., and I'm not junior, I'm senior. My brother is Bill Lear Jr. Anyway, it says here, Wharton round up crew members to fly them, among them Larry Rabb, a retired U.S. airman, Alberto Alberti, a Cuban exile who helped lead the Bay of Pigs operation, and John Lear, son of the inventor of the Learjet. Between runs from Budapest to Jeddah, the Saudis granted stopover rights for fueling to Mogadishu. The pilot stayed in Salzburg, where Glatt put them up in the hotel barrel off. Anyway, on and on and on. Anyway, a lot of this is about that, and I phoned up Ken Silverstein, and he said, I couldn't find you. And I said, well, I'm here in Las Vegas. So he said, I would have loved to talk to you about those days. And one of the interesting things is along in the book here, he talks about a different airline and reading the records of where certain airplanes went. And he put, I guess I can't find it here. Could be here. Oh, right here. He put, the torpedoes were picked up in an airfield near Gdansk and flown to Andrews Air Force Base by Kalila. It has Kaliha, commercial freight shipper. It's not Kalila, it's Kaleta. That's who I worked for. And Connie Kaleta ran that airline, but somehow he couldn't read the writing. So anyway, that was kind of an interesting book. But we met at this hotel room, at the International Hotel Room, and we got a phone call to go to this certain room number, and we all met there, and there was like about 12 of us. And Wharton comes in, and I didn't know him, and he holds up this little piece of paper as he comes in, and we're all saying hello. It just said, "Remember, walls listen." And he held it up, pointed at each of us. And then he said, "Welcome to Budapest. You'll find Hungary is a really nice place to visit, particularly in the beginning of the late fall here." And he said, "Outdoors," he said, "we have the Danube running by, separating Budapest." He said, "Buda is on the north, Pest is on the south," and he goes with this dialogue. And as he's telling this dialogue, he has this piece of paper, and the piece of paper is in that logbook there, in the thing. But he takes it to each one of us as we're sitting here and hands it to that guy and points at him, and the guy is supposed to read it. And all the time he's carrying on this dialogue about taking a tour around Budapest. And then when that guy's done with it, he picks the paper and points at that guy and he reads it. And all along he's telling about this. And anyway, at the end he says, "Now we're going to go have some dinner, and we're going to show you the Great Chain Bridge out here." So we go out to the Chain Bridge, which is in front of the hotel, and that's a picture of it over there, I think. And we get in the middle of this Chain Bridge, and he said, "Okay, here's what we're doing. We're taking arms to Mogadishu. You're going to stop in Jeddah. And here's the flight numbers you're going to use coming out of Budapest. And here's the flight numbers you're going to use coming back." And just all the essential information. And then he said, "As far as anybody, don't answer any questions. If anybody corners you, you say that you're taking agricultural equipment to Africa." So anyway, that ended up being flying those Budapest. What happened was, in those days, Mogadishu, Somalia, had been supported by Russia, and they had old Russian and East Bloc guns. And so the Russians had built the deep water port on the north of Somalia called Berbera. And it's very important. Remember, this is 1977. It's very important to get real estate on the Red Sea, because they knew that when they started attacking Iran, that eventually the Straits of Hormuz would be closed, and the only way to get oil out of the Middle East would be to ship it to Yanbu on the Red Sea, and then have it come by tankers either through the Suez Canal north or south through the Gulf of Aden. So it was important to get real estate right at the Gulf of Aden. Well, so that was when the Russians made the mistake of arming the Ethiopian rebels and...
the Eritreans.
What?
The Eritreans.
Yeah. And Somali said, "Well, if you're going to arm our friends, you can get out of here," and they kicked them out. But then they get ready to have a war, and they don't have any ammunition. Well, Russian or East Bloc ammunition has always been 1 millimeter larger than West Bloc, so that they can use our ammunition, but we can't use theirs. So we offered to arm, "Hey, Somalia, let us help you out here, if we can just have that deep water port." "Yeah, no problem." So I wound up taking all the all the East Bloc ammunition out of Budapest down to Somalia for the wars that were being fought for wherever. Well, yeah, that was the beginning of Somalia, and we're seeing the fruits of what I did in those days, getting Berbera. The reason that the U.S., I think, is waiting to attack Iran is because they need to be sure that they have Aden and that no help can come out of Aden to block the Gulf of Aden, because the Gulf of Aden is a real small place there. And so then lately you've heard that we've had stories about Al-Qaeda, the bad guys collecting in Aden to do this and to do that. That's not true, but we're saying that so that we have a reason to put soldiers into Aden to protect the north part. So,
And of course, the British were in there beforehand after the war.
So,
Can I ask you about, were you ever involved in anything in Afghanistan in those days? It was Soviet, they were there, but were you, we know that at some point
no, I flew.
working with some of the local kings or lords. So.
No, I flew into Kabul in 76 and 77 when I was flying for Trans-Mediterranean Airways out of Beirut. And it was so fascinating because Afghanistan has been a fascinating area for me. And I was reading James Michener's Caravans at the time, which is about the history of Afghanistan and all the interesting things that are there. And it just happened when I was reading that, I was flying in there. So we'd stay overnight there, and I'd spend, as soon as we landed, I'd grab a taxi and go to, in each and every place that I could to see all this stuff. And I was going to take my wife on a vacation around Afghanistan that summer, but I got transferred to Bangkok and I couldn't do it. I'm sorry now because there's been a lot of changes in Afghanistan since then.
So you, in the 70s, where the Russians were having a hard time there, because the...
Right. They were supported by the CIA.
Yeah.
The Russians. Al-Qaeda was formed by the CIA to fight the Russians.
Yeah, we know that. But you weren't in there with weapons or doing hardware.
Oh, this was 76 and 77, and none of that was happening then. The Russians didn't go in until, what, the 80s?
No, it was before, wasn't it?
Couldn't have been much before, because they weren't there when I was going in there. Yeah. So then the Mogadishu came to a close and came over here. That was when we lived in Cairo, and our kids were young, and it was just tough on Marilee. And
how many kids did you have, and what was it like?
I have 2 with Marilee and 2 with my first wife. I have total 4, all girls. And
oh my God!
I promised, yeah, right. I promised Marilee that let me finish that work in Cairo, and then we would come back here, and I'd get a local job. So we did, and I got a job flying for different airlines, passengers, worldwide stuff, but stuff that I could be home
so
eventually.
You got a day job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. I got a day job.
But can I ask again about this accident you had? And then you take a year to get well again, to get on your feet again, and then you start flying again. Can you say more about that? It's a bit,
Yeah, well, the problem was that I'd broken my ankles, shattered my ankles, and broke my legs in 3 places, lost all my teeth, broke my jaw. But through my career, I was so interested in flying that I didn't let the pain bother me of my feet. My feet were in Geneva in 1961. They didn't have any reconstructive surgery. All they did was cast the wound. So that when I got older, it was going to start causing me problems, which I didn't pay attention to because I was having a lot of fun flying. So then after I retired, I got time to think about it, sitting behind this desk, and it got worse and worse and worse. So I still have it, and I use medication to control it. But the reason you have pain is because you're paying for something you did in a previous lifetime. And so you just have to work through it until you get into your next life.
So what was the spiritual or the other reason for having this accident in that young age then?
What was the reason?
Because, no, it's, that normally that would have scared anyone off, or flying again, or losing interest.
No, because I knew why it happened. I just started to spin too low. And if I was paying attention to my altitude, I wouldn't have started it. But the altimeter is reading in meters, and I wasn't even sure what altitude I started it at, but I started a 3-turn spin, and at the second turn, I looked and I saw a barn go by, and I was thinking, holy shit, I'm low. And, by the time that, I hit, but I knew that it was my fault, and, I love to fly, so just because I got banged up didn't mean that I was going to stay away from it.
So what about this, you've got to work through karma from a previous life. What philosophy have you adopted with that?
What the hell's going on out there? The purpose of us being on Earth is to learn how to live, is for our souls to mature, to learn how to live with integrity and learn how to live without envy, hate, or greed. And also to express our love to our family each and every day as much as we can. And that doesn't mean I love you, honey, as you're flying out the door. That's all we have to do on Earth. We don't have to worry about Africa, the war in the Middle East, this or that. That's all we have to do. And when we die, we get we enter this huge lobby. And if you see what Steve Jobs said when he died, his whole family is around his bed, and the last words he said was, "Oh my," something like that, 3 times. And he was seeing the lobby because it is so huge and fantastic. And then you're entered up there, and whoever you happen to believe in on Earth escorts you into the lobby. If you believe in God, God's there. If you believe in Jesus, He's there to enter. If you believe in the Buddha enters in the lobby. If you believe in, if you're Muslim, and Allah meets you there. Me, I believe in the Great Pumpkin. So the Great Pumpkin will meet me and escort me into the lobby. You get to meet your family or whoever happens to be around the lobby when the time you get there. And then they take you to a room where you see the good things you did in your life and the bad things you did in your life. And they know everything. There isn't the slightest little thing you could hide nasty that you did in your life that they don't know about. There is no judgment. They don't have any judgment whether it's good or bad. But if you haven't learned how to live with integrity and without envy, hate, or greed, back to Earth, or one of the billion times a billion prison planets where people go to mature their soul. So,
is this a philosophy that you've got as a result of your crash and you went out of body, or something else?
No, I was just floating above. Yeah, I was out of my body. I was just floating above, and I looked down and I said, "You're not going to make it. You've got too much damage." And I know why I said that is because the road from Roll, where the boarding school was, to Geneva was bumpy, and I could feel these bumps and it was rattling my insides, and that's what made me think you're not going to make it. There's just too much that's hurt in there. So anyway, one of the reasons that you hear about the little grays here, they're just robots, glorified robots, and their job is to pick you up once when you're 3, once when you're 7, once when you're 13. They take you to the moon, and they be sure that everything's operating okay. The same as if you have taken in your car for a 3,000-mile inspection. Oil's okay, change the oil, fan belt's okay, water's okay, check the battery fluid, that kind of stuff. That's what they do. Then after 13, you're picked up as necessary, but sometimes it's not necessary. The other thing they do is they be sure that, life is already written, it's already a plan, it's already written out exactly how it's supposed to happen. And if you happen to be in an accident like I was and die before your time, or get seriously hurt before your time, they see that you live. So in the very short span between the time I was 5 feet from the ground, they came in and they made the crash just less enough that it wouldn't kill me. And so that's why I'm alive.
So did you meet them?
Have you gone out of body after?
No.
Or different time?
No. So that's why I lived. And,
So you met the Greys then? Have you remembered them? Have you seen them?
I don't remember them.
So
Yeah,
where
but that
does...
doesn't explain your philosophy. Why you think it's a great pumpkin that will come and meet you?
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, well,
I say the great pumpkin because so many people who believe in God. There's no God. I mean, the universe is infinite. It goes on forever. It's billions and billions and billions of galaxies, big, but there's no end. And so the people say, well, the Lord Jesus, went and ascended to the God, and God takes care of us. That didn't happen. There couldn't possibly be a God who administers over how big this universe is. It's enormous. You can't even get the average person to tell you how big the universe is. So I use the great pumpkin rather than say everybody that there's no God or, Jesus didn't exist. He wasn't mentioned in the Old Testament. He was just a,
Hi, this is John Lear.
back to the great pumpkin.
Yeah, the great pumpkin.
The reason I said great pumpkin is because people resent sometimes when you say that God doesn't exist, and I have to tell them that a force exists. The same things are in place that you believe in, but there's no God. I mean, there couldn't be one guy that looks over this entire universe with there's no end, and do the things that he's alleged to do, and so that's why I use a great pumpkin.
but then again, you say you refer to he as a guy sitting somewhere, which you discover is not true. But people now talk about God as source.
Say good.
Source.
A force?
No, not force, but the source.
The source?
Yes, the source principle as being God, which is
No,
the universe looking back at itself. And they also talk about, and I do also, about the higher consciousness. So when you talk about, you say the meaning of life is to live with integrity here on earth.
That's not the meaning of life. That's how to get into the into where the adults are, into where the adults play.
To grow.
Yeah,
That's the point of, this experience here.
yeah.
So to learn what we call higher consciousness, that reflects that there is such a thing as higher. You can talk about then higher beings, but people now talk about the source, which is meaningful.
To some people, if they want to, whatever they want to believe in, that's okay with me. I'm not trying to sell anything. I don't have any DVDs. I don't write any books. I don't have any tapes. I'm just looking for the truth. And if anybody wants to listen to what I have to say, they're welcome to. They don't have to believe in it because I don't sell anything, And if they want to try to sell me, God or something like that, I just don't have time because I have, I'm busy doing other stuff. And I agree, you can have your God, everything like that, but don't bother me with it.
So what do you mean by cleaning out the petri dish?
That was a
that
term
sort of
that I
phrase.
used when I didn't know anything, when I first started in this. And it was kind of obvious that every 25,000 years that this earth was tumbled, so that these great civilizations, Earth has been here for like 20 to 25 billion years. And there's been these great civilizations grow and become civilizations on Earth, but they don't last forever. There comes a time and a reason why they have to be dissolved. So they mix the Earth up and pile mountains on. And, if you went around Earth, there's probably 100 different fantastic civilizations buried under the Himalayas or the Sahara Desert or under the Atlantic or whatever of these civilizations that have been before. So when I said clean out the petri dish, this is what I was thinking they did. That's not right. But it may be right in a certain way. All they're doing is getting ready for the next source, the next people that come along, if they're humans or whatever they happen to be growing.
Have you picked this philosophy up during meeting other people as you've flown around, or just something this is part of your nature?
No, this comes from Sleeper, Lou Baldwin, and he started posting on Above Top Secret in the summer of 2005. And when I started reading his stuff, it had only gone to about 115 pages. And I thought it was interesting. It said, are extraterrestrials real? Yes, as real as the nose on your face. So I read through about 20 pages, and I instinctively knew this guy has done that. He's been there, and I want to hear more of this.
What made that appeal? What was the thing which was
the one single thing?
A lot of stuff on those forums.
He talked about all his life. He grew up in Italy. He was the son of a U.S. serviceman. He became a U.S. serviceman himself, and all during the time he was growing up and in the service, the aliens would come and pick him up and take him for tours around the universe, everywhere, and feed him all this information. And he could never figure why they were doing this. And he had, total recall of all the different places he went and all the stuff. And he wrote 2 books. We wrote 5 books, but 2 of them were In League with the UFO, which is the story of what the U.S. did with the Roswell crash, what they found on the ship, how they tried to use it, and all the little things that were there. And the other is A Day with an Extraterrestrial, and it's a kind of a neat story about how they come and pick him up in Kansas City, where he lives, and take him to the farthest reaches of the universe in one day, and just it's kind of neat. So anyway, I got to the 20th page of his post, and what really got to me was he described how he would be taken by the ETs when he worked with the Army, that they would send a U.S. Serviceman to pick him up, and they would take him to the outside of a hangar. And when he'd walk in the street side of a hangar, there would be these cardboard hallways built. I mean, not cardboard, plywood hallways, which would lead to the craft. And he never saw the craft. He would just go in the craft. And there'd be a U.S. serviceman standing at the entrance, and the U.S. servicemen had no say in what was going on. They were just there to provide the plywood hallway and the space where to park the ship. So that was what told me this guy is telling the truth.
And this is our last photo.
Okay, that's racing a B-26 in the 1968 Reno Air Races. It was the largest airplane ever raced at Reno, and I came in 5th.
You came in 5th?
I came in 5th out of 6 airplanes, and the 6th airplane that I passed was a P-51, and one of the pilots of the B-70 program came up to me after the race and said that he had personally seen 3 fighter pilots commit suicide off the back of the grandstands when I passed the P-51.
So you are exceeding its nominal flight velocity.
Right, and if you want to check on his name, it was Ted Sturmthal. He was one of the B-70 pilots.
Well, we're coming to the end of our first section, so we'll take a little bit of breather and then talk about all that stuff in detail in part 2.
Okay.